So I didn't intentionally want to make a video about the She-Hulk TV show. Mostly because it's not finished yet. I don't see the point in making a review critique analysis talking about whatever it is that I'm doing. I don't see a point in doing that when the show's not finished. And I'm still not going to do this. I just finished watching episode 2 and I saw this thing that I usually pick up in shows. I don't know if that's like an official name, but it's the difference between a passive protagonist and an active protagonist. And it's one of the, let's say, pet peeves of mine that I pick up on, and I think is something that you should strive not to have. It's something you should be mindful of, the effect. And so I wanted to talk about it. There's not really going to be much spoiler. It's for She-Hulk. It's very concrete to a short scene, a very little plot element. Kind of like it's given in the title She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So I'm gonna pick up it. So I'll go through it and then I'll come up with what I think is a better alternative, and try and go a bit into why I think it's not good. So to start off, I want to introduce you to something called Pixar's 22 rules for storytelling. And of course, with any rules in storytelling, visual storytelling, any media, they aren't exactly, gospel, but they're rules so that you can know what is happening. It's not an exact science. It's not like X equal 1, but it's like little guidelines and things that you can keep in mind and look up and see why am I feeling this? Why does this scene work? Why doesn't this work with this movie or whatever you're currently enjoying? It's just something to keep in mind. So the first rule, and is one of the ones that I that stuck on me, is you admire a character for trying more than their successes. And that is also coming in a bit to play here at the She-Hulk episode example I'm going to bring up. But it's just a general good rule, I think. Rule number 2, you gotta keep in mind what's interesting for you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. They can be very different. Rule number 3 is trying for theme is important, but you won't see what the story is actually about till you're at the end of it. Now rewind. This kind of ties in a bit to if you heard me talking about how I like my stories to have an ending, and this is why a lot of TV shows don't really, I'm not going to say sit well, but why I'm just not super impressed. It's because to me a story has a beginning and end, beginning, middle and ending, and then something cohesive come from that narrative, that story. And if you have a series that goes on for 6 seasons, they seem to be very rarely planned. And I feel the difference, I can tell the difference. It's less of a quality product to me. Okay, so rule number 4. Once upon a time there was blank. Every day blank. One day blank. Because of that blank. Because of that blank. Until finally blank. Again, it's a way to set up some consequence, some actions. Like first you establish the status quo every day, let's say, then one day something happened. Ideal, that could be, we'll get to it later about coincidence, but ideally maybe this is something that has to do with the protagonist. It doesn't need to be like, for example, Mulan, the Disney animated movie. It's one of the best stories that I can think of, like in execution, and she has nothing to do with the Han invasion. So it doesn't have to be protagonist driven, not yet. That's what we'll come into later. So, rule number 5, simplicity, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing value stuff, but it sets you free. I think this is even more applicable to games. We'll see how some games that may be, like Assassin's Creed, could have been 1, 2, 3 games. It's now 7 games, and I think the story stretches a bit thin. So we have rule number 6. What is your character good at? Comfortable with? Throw the polar opposite at them. Challenge them. How do they deal? Yeah. Come up with rule number 7, which I think is also applies to this She-Hulk example here. Coming up with your ending before you figure out your middle. Seriously, endings are hard. Get your working up front. Okay, that wasn't what I thought. I should read this ahead of this. But it's just one of the things that, again, that I keep saying, with if the ending's not good, you don't have it in mind. Like, the story is a cohesive whole. I don't like we talked a bit on Umbrella Chronicles, or something based on, if you see a comic book or a story or a book like Game of Thrones, based on a book that's not finished, or a series of books that's not finished, you rarely set yourself up for success. Okay, rule number 8. Finish your story. Let go, even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, you'd have both, but move on, do better next time. I mean, this is more of just a production. When I was in 3D school, my teacher said, it doesn't have to be art, it has to be finished. That's just the world we live in. You're making a product. At the end of the day, you can call it what you want, and hopefully you feel great about it, but you're making a product that people need to buy. Simple as that. Rule number 9. When you're stuck, make a list of what wouldn't happen next. Lots of time, the materials to get you unstuck will show up. I mean, I don't write a lot, so a lot of these things I interpret to what I do. But yeah, take that. Pull apart, here rule number 10, pull apart the stories you like. What you like in them is a part of you. You've got to recognize it before you can use it. A bit philosophical there, but okay. Rule 11. Putting it on paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. Yeah, I've had that a lot in production as well. Just get something on paper, start making storyboard or whatever, because then you can fix it or address it. We have it a lot when we start new projects. We see what is this system, or what do we do here, and I will figure it out later and stuff like that. Yeah, and don't be hard. I heard it with some of the film schools project that I worked on. Is don't be hard on the first draft, and don't fall in love with it either. Just, it's there so that you finally have things, you can see things, scenes, supposedly, or story plots in relations. So yeah, get it out there. Rule number 12. Discount the first thing that comes to mind, and the second, third, fourth, fifth. Get the obvious out of the way. Surprise yourself. I took this to heart a lot with animations, when I had to come up with an animation. And it's like purely functional, like for instance the reload of a pistol. If you have to come up with some flair, some personality, but then don't do, try to not go with, first instinct. Try to do something unique, or something that'll fit the character, not just because you saw it, like the Iron Man landing pose. If you start seeing it everywhere, stuff like that. Rule number 13, give your characters opinions. Passive, malleable, might seem likable to you as you write, but it's poison to the audience. Yeah, take that to heart. Rule number 14. I think this is very in today. I think this rule needs to be followed more in the media that I'm consuming these days. Why must you tell this story? What is the belief burning within you that your story feeds off of? What is the heart of it? And yeah, especially with Marvel, that I'm generally a fan of. I'm a big fan of the movies. I kind of look at stuff and just say, why did you tell this story? It's not nice. I see it in a lot of the movies that I didn't like. It's like something like Midsummer. I'm just ending up being like, why did you want to show me this? Why did you want to tell me this? Why was this important to spend time on making and for me to watch? So yeah, that's a good one to think about. Rule number 15. If you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honesty lends credibility to unbelievable situations. Yeah, good as well. Rule number 16. What are the stakes? Give us reason to root for the character. What happens if they don't succeed? Stack the odds against. I somewhat hold on to this as well, but not really as much what's the stakes, but what is the consequence or the reaction. I rarely feel when you have characters that I get the motivation. I talk a lot about it when it's there, when it's good. I feel the character motivation is clear. The character is like, I like this, or I want this, I need this, I don't like this. In more elegant, let's say, way, not this ham-fisted way, but yeah, to bring it into perspective of the character. Okay, rule number 17. No work is ever wasted. If it's not working, let go and move on. It'll come back around to be useful later. Yeah, that's as good as any. You know, like the saying about the light bulb. You need 1,000 ways not to invent a light bulb first. Rule number 18. You have to know yourself. The difference between doing your best and fussing. Story is testing, not refining. Guess that's more of a writing thing. Story is testing. There we go. One rule, the next one, number 19, is one that also stuck with me in the back of my head. So I keep noticing when it's broken, and it's rule number 19. Coincidences to get character into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of it are cheating. And that is also something that will come up once I'm done here with the rules. I'll get back to She-Hulk, and I'll come up with the thing that bothered me. So rule number 20 is actually an exercise called take the building block of a movie you dislike. How do you rearrange them into what you do like? Could be a fun exercise. Rule number 21. You gotta identify with your situation / characters. Can't write cool. What would make you act that way? That can be difficult, so it's good advice. Rule number 22. What is the essence of your story? Most economical telling of it. If you know that, you can build out from there. Yeah, I like that as well. Kind of like keeping it simple in a sort of way, as they said, cut, shortcut, combine characters. It's not fun. It often drags out stories. So with the bit of a rule book out of the way, let's get into She-Hulk and what I think was the passive protagonist scene or problem that I stumbled upon. So our main character, Jennifer, is a lawyer, and she gets fired from her job. And she gets fired in a circumstance, I'm keeping this as spoiler free as I can. She gets fired for doing the right thing, which is nice. We can sympathize to this. after Jennifer is fired, we see a montage of her getting a lot of rejections for being a lawyer. She applies to a new law firm, they all reject her. This is also good. This shows that she is trying. We, like one of the rules I said, we admire a character for trying more than their success. And a montage is also a good way to show in movies, television, that some time has passed. It's not just the day after. We don't know how much time. I would say it's not the longest of time, maybe like a few days, because of some of the scenes she meets a new character and it's relative new still that she lost her job. So that was the setup, and then here comes the scene. Jennifer, after this montage, Jennifer sits at a bar. And here it comes. While she's drinking, Jennifer is approached with a job offer because another law firm has a special client with strong relations to superheroes. And that's the scene. There's no need to explain further and elaborate. But that is the scene. Jennifer gets fired. She tries to get hired. It doesn't work. Then she sits in a bar and is approached by a big law firm guy, and he has a new job. He has a job offer for her. So from Jennifer, all she does is she sits at the bar. There was nothing she did or mentioned or in the montage or in the previous scenes that has any effect to this. There's no action, so this job offer is not a reaction to anything she did or someone she knew came up with. This was meant to happen, so to speak, and that's what I feel the problem is. Like, no matter what Jennifer would have done, she could have not been searching for a job. She could have done anything. She was in this bar and she got a job offer. And when you start thinking about it, this guy, it hasn't been established that it's a well-known fact that Jennifer is at this bar often. As far as we can tell, this lawyer guy just happens to walk in, or he's been kind of like looking for Jennifer around town and said, oh, there she is at this non-disclosed bar. It kind of gets worse the more you think about it. So this is what I'm saying. This is a passive protagonist. Jennifer didn't really do anything to make this succeed. Yes, she did some things, and that's good writing, I think. But it would have worked so much better if she somehow had been active. It had come from her. If someone she knew had come up, because she's hired because the law firm has a client connected to superheroes. So Jennifer could have suggested that at law firms. She could have approached the other law firms and saying, hey, when you have superhero cases, I have experience with that. Something that would have changed the whole thing. I feel that would have made her active, and you could have rooted for her. Right now she did nothing, and success, in other terms, was just dumped in her lap, and that's not compelling, I think. And it's I think like an easy way to make characters not, or make the audience not like your characters. So she sat at a bar, opportunity arrived. She didn't make it happen. That's kind of like my whole big gripe about it. If you think about it in a way, let's say if this had been a game, we're playing a game. Games are so much more reliant on active protagonists because you are playing the game, you're not watching the movie. There's a difference, as in, when movies separate themselves from books, they say show, don't tell. And when games separate themselves from movies, they say do, don't show. So let's say you play a game and you were in prison, and no matter how clever you are with ketchup bottles, or even if you're using the old cliche of tying bed sheets together, to get out of the prison, that is still an active protagonist, and to me that is that is still better than just being rescued out of nowhere. If a game had done that, you were in prison and you just have to wait until you get rescued, I think that would have been poison for a game and the audience would have hated it. And now you know why this scene in Rogue One might have felt a little bit underwhelming. Anyways, that was what got kicked in my little mind, in my brain hole, when I watched She-Hulk episode 2. So, I hope you found it useful. Thank you for watching.
Congratulations, you are being rescued. Please do not resist.